Please listen carefully.
Here we are, the NFL draft. It is, this is going to come out the Wednesday before the draft. The draft is tomorrow. We're recording this 6 days before. I, for one, love the NFL draft. I think it is my favorite event in all of sports. And the last couple years, I have really gone into it as I have learned more about the game of football. And I have talked to more people online who have forgotten more football than I will ever learn. And it's a very fun time. There's so much hope in the air. Everyone thinks they're getting the next great player.
Yeah, I only have one small amendment because I agree. But my one small amendment is pre-draft is the most exciting time of the year. The actual NFL draft is almost always disappointing because it's almost like Christmas, right? Like you're looking at a bunch of unopened boxes for months and you have an idea of what's in there. And even if you get exactly what you wanted, it still isn't as fun as the idea of the thing. So every year, it's our toaster theory we've talked about. Exactly, it's the toaster theory. And so every single year, you're hoping, okay, I hope I get a toaster. And sometimes you do get the toaster, and then it's still just a toaster. But yeah, the NFL draft is really, really, it's really fun because it's a crop of new NFL talent. Every year, there's always breakout rookies, guys that you expect to be really good, guys that end up not being good, guys that you don't expect to be good who do end up being good. So it's like I said, it's like Christmas. And so leading up to the draft, we both did our own various levels of research. You go really hard into the draft. I used to go harder into the draft, into like researching all of the players. I used to do mock drafts. This year, not so much. But you went really, really hard in the paint this year. I went heavy. I went deep. It's really like the second year in a row that I've gone like over 100 prospects deep, looking at, whatever film I could find, reading every scouting report I could get my little stubby fingers on. It's very fun for me. It's, I probably spend too much time on it as a hobby, but it brings me great joy. So in the end, who cares? Totally. And so let's jump into the first thing that we're going to talk about, which is the general draft philosophy that we both hold. I think there's going to be a lot of overlap here. I think we generally agree on most sports related things, but I think let's start with this because we talked about this on previous NFL pods, the value of a first round pick and whether or not it's as valuable as everyone thinks that it is. Because I think I've changed my tune just a slight smidge. I may have changed my tune also. Ooh. So we'll see how this goes. That's the great thing about thoughts is, they're constantly changing. This is a pro thoughts podcast. This is a pro thought and a pro, changing your opinion when you get new information podcast, which some people don't like. Yeah, very true. Very true. Anyways, but I think, first round picks have a tendency to be overvalued. Again, because of the toaster theory. We always think whatever player we're getting with the first round pick is going to be an all-pro, all-star player. Oftentimes that is not the case. So generally I would say it's good to, move your first round pick for an established player if, the financial restrictions that you have work for that. The amendment I would make to my thought is unless you're using your first round pick to get your guy, which is a very broad term. And, sometimes your guy actually isn't the guy, but you just think it is. But unless you're using your first round pick, it kind of sounds like bullshit what I'm saying. No. Yeah, I know what you mean. Not all first round picks are all pro players. So only use your first round pick unless you're getting an all pro player. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think also like we look at the draft in sort of a weird way, like because the supposed best players are supposed to go in the first round, the supposedly second tier players are supposed to go in the second round. We look at the picks in, descending value because of that. I'm almost like post analytics and post value, like postmodernism. Yeah. Yeah. like for example, like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Normally I would have said like, don't take a running back in the first round. Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes at the end of the first round last year. And, he's a pretty good running back. I think he's going to be better this year than he was last year. But he's getting paid like just shy of $11 million for 4 years, just shy of $3 million per year. That's an insanely good contract. So for a team that like could really use an explosive running back. So I think that the real value in the first round pick and the real value in all draft picks is just the cheap contract that comes with it.
Exactly.
Because you are getting a chance to look at Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson is, I think you could say, a top 10 receiver right now.
That's fair.
Just after one season. Some people might quibble with that, maybe top 15.
10 to 20 range, I think, is a very reasonable, fair place to put him.
Yeah, for sure. And so you take a guy in the first round and you get maybe a top 20 receiver and you have him on a super cheap contract. So that's where the real value is. I still agree that just in general, I would prefer to trade back in the draft and acquire more assets, because I think of every round being as valuable as the first round. But still, the value of the first round pick is, like you said, if you know that your guy is your guy, or even if your guy isn't your guy and they turn out to not be fantastic. Look at the Niners drafting Solomon Thomas. They thought he was their guy. They went after him. That's okay. It was a cheap contract for 4 years. You got a pretty decent player for, 4 years. So yeah, that's my only slight amendment is like, I'm now in a position of post value where like its value is so subjective. It's so individual. It's like so team dependent, like whatever the team needs, that I almost will not fault anybody for taking anybody at this point. Like, yeah, unless it's somebody that's supposed to go in the 5th round that you're taking if you're the Raiders and you're taking a kicker or a punter in the first round,
when you're picking Sebastian Janikowski in the first round, that
exactly. Yeah, that's a little
not
bit
ideal.
Iffy, because you do want to play the game, because that's also part of the valuing is like, you want to try to get a guy that you have ranked really high at a later pick if you think that you can still get them at that later pick. But that's pretty risky. And if he is your guy, go get your guy, no matter where you are.
I think the Raiders are actually a perfect example of a team under Mike Mayock that has, not really cared about where a guy is ranked, but have gotten a guy if they're their guy. I think when they drafted Kellen Farrell out of, where'd he go? Out of Clemson. They picked him like 4th overall, and a lot of people are like, this is a mid to late first round guy. Or last year they picked Damon Arnett at the like end of the first round, and people are like, this is more of like a mid-second round guy, but they liked him, so they went and got him. Another like great example, I think, kind of just what we're talking about, of just like, get your guy if he's your guy. If you know he's like a great player, go get him. Doesn't really matter what his position is like Quentin Nelson on the Colts.
Yeah.
Like, everyone agreed. They're like, yeah, Quentin Nelson is like a dominant player who's like absolutely going to be an all-pro for years to come. But he's a guard, so don't pick him in the first round. Yeah. And the Colts were like, no, we're going to get an all-pro with the 6th pick. We're just going to do it, because why not? How often do you have a chance to get an all-pro player? Meanwhile, like a guy who like wasn't really like the guy, but everyone was like, he's a solid player, is like in that same draft, like Mike McGlinchey. I love Mike McGlinchey, but he's just like a perfectly fine player. And, in theory, the Niners would have been better off trading that first-round pick for like an all-pro tackle that a team was looking to move.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I'm curious. Let's jump through this really quick before we go into the QB group. I'm curious if you have like specific 1 or 2 things that you're looking for at each position. Because I went down and I was just looking at the positions and I was like, what is it that I'm like attracted to? Who do I want to date? Yeah. In this draft class based on their skill set. What are they bringing to the table? So let's start with the running backs, maybe. I
like a running back who can get yards and break tackles. For example, like a perfect example of that guy for me in this class, who I love and I may be higher on than a lot of other people, is Javonte Williams, the running back of North Carolina. Have you watched him at all?
Yeah. And this is, again, I've talked about this before, but this sometimes Madden can really like break my brain, because Javonte Williams became a stud for me in one of my Madden franchises. But yeah, I have watched a lot of real life tape of him, and he's very, very good.
Javonte Williams is one of those dudes who just has like a constant ability to break tackles for me. Like, it's going to take 1 or 2 guys to bring him down, not necessarily because he's like the fastest guy or the strongest guy, but just because he's good at breaking tackles. Like, it's that simple. Kind of same with Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's not the fastest running back in the NFL. That's probably like, I don't know. Actually, technically, it is Raheem Mostert is the fastest running back in the NFL if we're going by stats. He's not the strongest running back in the NFL. He's not the biggest. That's Derrick Henry. But he just like constantly breaks tackles.
Yeah, it's about the ability to break through the first contact. And that's where like guys like Frank Gore have made a career, because like they just bounce off guys and fall forward every time. And a lot of that comes down to balance. So that's like the number one trait that I'm really looking for is balance.
That's what I have in my notes here for Javonte Williams is excellent contact balance.
Exactly. So because if you can maintain balance and if you can get a low center of gravity and stay on your feet, you're always going to fall forward. You're always going to get an extra 2 yards because of that.
Alvin Kamara is a guy who's excellent at that too.
Things like speed and ability to catch the ball and pass blocking and all that stuff is like important as well. And you want to get a guy that's well-rounded. But like if you're just looking for a singular trait that I think will have the most carryover into the NFL, I think it's balance and the ability to break the first contact. Let's go over to receivers. What are the things that you're looking for in a receiver?
This is one that's like kind of changed for me over the years, because I used to be like a really big like guy on like I want guys who run crisp routes, but I also think like if you have like a good offensive scheme, you can just scheme guys open. Like route running still very important, but I think you can just get guys open. You don't need guys to be able to run all the routes in a route tree. I think people like DK Metcalf has proved that wrong. I also don't think at the same time you need the fastest guy in the world either. I think we've seen players like Michael Thomas, who's not very fast, Keenan Allen, who's not very fast, DeAndre Hopkins dominate the game. What it comes down for me for wide receivers, and in a way this is kind of like a broader point for all players, is I want players who win however they win, like off the line, and I want them to win consistently. And there's a whole bunch of different ways to do that. You can do it with route running. You can do it with speed. You can, there's players like T. Higgins, who I love, who wins at the point of the catch. I just want players who win their matchup. And however they do that, if they do it consistently, that's fine for me.
A good example of that also, and I think this speaks for tight ends as well, because tight ends and receivers are basically morphing into the same thing. A good example of this is George Kittle. He runs some routes that are like if you drew it on a piece of paper, it's not like a sharp edge in route. It's just like a curve. It's like a soft C. Like he just kind of goes, like he just moves into a soft spot of the defense. So it's like finding those soft spots in the defense that allow George Kittle to just rack up a ton of yards. Before we jump into the next position group, are there specific guys at the wide receiver position that you're just like you're just banging the table for and you have to have if you're a GM? This
wide receiver class, much like last year's, is loaded again, and I think a lot of that is coming from like the prevalence of like 7-on-7 football that players are playing in like the high school years, the developmental that's going on. Because last year's class was loaded, this year's class is loaded, next year's class is going to be loaded. I love guys like Shi Smith out of South Carolina, Josh Palmer from Tennessee, Austin Watkins from UAB, Amir Smith-Marset is a absolute stud out of Iowa. But like my number one guy in this class, and a guy who like people are trashing on a lot, is Devontae Smith from Alabama.
Okay,
it's like he had the best season we've ever seen of a wide receiver last year.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, he's only 166 pounds, so he's trash. And I'm like, it didn't seem to be a problem for him in the SEC when he was going up against NFL defenders every single week. Jim Nagy, who runs the Senior Bowl, he used to be a scout for the Chiefs also, and he was talking about when they were, the year Russell Wilson came out, there was someone in their scouting department that said, besides his size, is there anything we don't like about him? And the whole room was silent. There was nothing else. And that's the same thing for me with Devontae Smith this year. I'm like, yeah, I would like him to be a little bigger, but also, there's the thing called weights that he can use that will like make him stronger over time with an NFL weight room. I don't understand why people are so down on this guy, because I talk about wide receivers who win. I see this guy win in every way possible. He wins with his route running. He wins with his speed. He wins at the point of the catch. I think he plays bigger than any wide receiver in this class, despite his, slight frame. I just love the kid. I'm very comfortable saying he's going to be a stud in this league for a long time.
Let's jump over to O-line real quick. Anything that stands out for you when you're looking at players?
When I watch O-linemen, what I'm looking for is feet and hands. Those are the two things I'm looking for. I need you to have, clean feet, not be stumbling around the place, and I need your hands to be, going in the right spot, and to be active with your hands. For me, the guy who I loving this year's class. He won't be a first round pick. He will probably more be like a fourth or fifth round pick. It's David Moore, the interior offensive lineman from Grambling State. I sent you the video of this guy at the Senior Bowl, and he's just like stonewalling people. Like, you cannot move this guy. He is, he's a spherical man, first of all. But he is so strong, and his hands are so good. I don't know. He's a guy who I'm like very comfortable saying, like, he may never be like an all-pro type player, but he's a dude who's going to be in the league for 10, 12 years.
And at the end of the day, like that's a win. Draft picks are basically flyers. You're taking a flyer on a guy and you're just filling a roster spot. You're hoping that they're going to be really good, but at the end of the day, if they aren't, like, hey, it's a roster spot with a cheap contract. Let's move over to the other side of the line. Defensive linemen. In general, I think we look at production in the wrong way with D-line. Like, we look at sacks and we look at tackles for loss and we look at numbers. But you want to buy pressure. You don't want to buy sacks. And so it's guys that can stay on the field, especially if you're drafting like a guy in the first 2 rounds. You want a guy that can stay on the field all 3 downs. Once you get later into the draft, you could get more specialty heavy. But guys that can stay on the field all 3 downs and create pressure and just blow up plays, whether they're getting sacks or not. You look at like Nick Bosa, his rookie year. And I'm so sorry that we're doing exclusively 49er examples. But
only 49ers comps on this pod.
Yeah. And you look at his rookie season, he had like 9.5 sacks, I think, but like he could have had 27. Like, he was blowing up every single play.
I think he had like 72 pressures or something insane like that. Or like, I don't know. It was an insane number.
Exactly. And when this has always stayed with me. When I played football in Pop Warner, one of our coaches said, like, I was trying to go after a sack and like I didn't get it. And he was like, you didn't get the sack, but you blew up the play. And that's all that we could ask for. And when he said blow up the play, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Just blow up the play is the general philosophy on defensive linemen for me.
I think that sacks are to like baseball what home runs are, where they're kind of like an old, antiquated stat. Where in baseball now, you look at more like slugging percentage for how good a guy is at, hitting for power and stuff, how many doubles and triples and home runs he's getting. You're looking at the whole picture, and QB pressure is like that for football now too, where it's like, you're not just looking at the end, like the best of the best. You're looking at the whole thing that goes into it. For me, with defensive linemen, it's actually one of the positions that, especially like edge rushers, that I value athleticism on more than others, especially like agility and bend that a guy has. That's a word you hear a lot around draft time, is how a dude bends, how bendy is he. And it's one of those positions where I'm more comfortable taking someone who's very raw, because I think you can teach guys pass rush moves and teach them how to use their hands better. Now, a guy who I love in this year's draft class, who I do not think is raw at all, is Jalen Phillips, who is the defensive end from Miami. Coming out of high school, he was neck and neck with Chase Young for the best edge rusher in the country. Went to UCLA, had some injuries there, had 2 concussions, and then he got in a car accident while he was on his bike and got like a 3rd one, I think, which UCLA has a policy. If you get 3 concussions, you have to stop playing football. So people keep saying he retired from football. He was medically forced to retire. He actually transferred to Miami to do music there, and then played on their football team and was a stud. And the medicals are concerning, but I think the talent alone makes him like a top 5 player in this draft.
Yeah, super talented. Totally agree. Linebackers. For me, it's like, I'm so attracted to speed at the linebacker position.
Yeah.
If you can fly around on the football field, like, obviously you're not going to be a top pick if you don't have sure-handed tackling. So if you combine really good tackle form with speed, that's just dangerous. That's everything.
Yeah. As I'm looking at my lists here, I'm noticing that I think I value athleticism on defense more than I do on offense.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is maybe because, defense is more reaction where offense is action, where on defense you're reacting to the offense. So you need that more athletic ability and the quick twitch to do that.
Yes.
And I totally agree with you. athleticism at the linebacker position, the ability to run sideline to sideline, especially in today's NFL where linebackers are having to cover tight ends and even a lot of times slot receivers now, you gotta be athletic. And that's why my favorite linebacker in this draft this year, maybe he's not my number one overall linebacker. I think he's going to be like a late first, early second type of guy, but it's Jamin Davis, the linebacker from Kentucky. Just absolute elite level of athleticism. Uber athletic. A little undersized, but again, I think he makes up for his deficiencies in the run game with how effective he is in coverage, which, like I mentioned, today's NFL, I think you really need that.
How about the secondary, corners and safeties? What are the things that you're looking for there?
So this is something that I've talked to people a lot on Twitter. I've done lots of listening to debates and conversations and stuff, and there's kind of like two type of corners maybe. There's the guys who are like really refined technique-wise, and there's the guys who are more athletic. I think a good example is like last year's draft class. The two top corners were Jeff Okudah, who was the more, technically savvy guy, and CJ Henderson, who had like the more raw man-to-man athletic ability. And I, again, tend to lean towards those bigger athletic corners. Like my guy this year, who I love at cornerback, my number one corner on the board, who I think is going to go higher than a lot of people think, is J.C. Horn.
Yes.
The corner from South Carolina. I've been on J.C. Horn for months. When the Niners were picking at 12, he was the guy I wanted right there.
Mm-hmm.
Every NFL corner who you listen to talk about this upcoming draft class says that he's the guy. He has that dog in him. He's got absolute elite athleticism. His relative athleticism score, which is, basically a whole numerical system that figures out how athletic a guy is compared to other guys at his position. The name is pretty self-explanatory. It's on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being like top, like 0.001 percentile, 0 being your, a slug out there. This is all to say JC Horn's relative athleticism score was 9.99.
That's ridiculous.
He's peak athleticism. This dude's going to be very good for a very long time.
It's athleticism, but I think like with cornerbacks, I actually don't care that much about like your top end speed. It's more so like you said earlier, like quick twitchy motions. It's the acceleration more than the speed. Because you are playing a reactionary position. The receiver knows where they're going. You have to figure out where they're going. Because you see guys like Richard Sherman, who does not have top end speed and has not had top end speed for a number of years. And he's able to make it work. A lot of that scheme.
Stephon Gilmore's another guy I think like that too. Yeah,
exactly. There's a ton of them, but like that's a lot of that scheme because like for Sherman, it's always been cover 3.
That's a super important point though, I think that you're making right now in just regards to the NFL draft. So much of this is like scheme dependent and location dependent on where guys go.
Yes.
Like Patrick Mahomes would not be as good as Patrick Mahomes has been if he went somewhere that wasn't the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Like if Patrick Mahomes went to the Bears, who were a mess at the time, he probably would have been better than Mitchell Trubisky because he's just more talented, but he would have not been, on the path to being one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game.
He probably, like, you see this a lot, like guys like Josh Allen, guys like, I don't know, you can name anybody, but like when you go to a team that is not super good right away, and you are a top tier talent quarterback, you throw a lot of interceptions. Peyton Manning threw a lot of interceptions his rookie year.
Absolutely.
Because you're trying to force things because your team you're trying to make up for the deficiencies that your team has.
It's this whole conversation we're having about Sam Darnold now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like everyone loves Sam Darnold coming into the draft. He went to the Jets, who were an absolute dumpster fire, but we're also like, Sam Darnold's very talented. Is he actually bad, or like was it the surrounding situation that made him not perform as well? And that's what we'll find out this year. Let's
jump into the biggest storyline probably about this NFL draft, and that's the QB group. We skipped over them at the top intentionally because we wanted to devote a lot of time to them. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson are going to go 1 and 2. I don't think is there a single mock draft in the entire world that has one of those guys not going 1 and 2?
I have not seen it. That seems to be the consensus. I don't necessarily think that's what those teams should do. But like that seems to be like we're pretty locked in on that happening.
For sure. Real quick thoughts on Trevor Lawrence. I texted you this the other day. Why is it that everyone's just penciling in Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence to just be great right away, to just build a dynasty? I did not love the Urban Meyer hire for a number of reasons. So I don't know why adding Trevor Lawrence to the equation automatically just makes it better. He's a good prospect. He's a great prospect. He does a lot of things really well, but I think there are multiple quarterbacks in this draft who do a lot of things better than Trevor Lawrence.
I feel like we're all like everyone's kind of penciling in Trevor Lawrence as this once in a generation type player. He's going to be the next John Elway. He has flaws. No one wants to talk about it, but he has lots of, maybe not lots, but he has a decent amount of flaws to him. He, first of all, has played in a system where he has not had to make reads, really. I don't understand why, we pick and choose which quarterbacks we want to say can't make reads. Fun fact, Justin Fields, who everyone says can't make reads, had the highest PFF grade on throws past his first reads in all of college football last year, so I'll just throw that out there.
Absolutely.
Fine, I'll just say it. Justin Fields is my number one quarterback in the draft.
There we go.
I'll just say it. I think Justin Fields is better than Trevor Lawrence. I'll go as far to say, actually, I made a list of a while back, and I've updated it since then, ranking my top 5 quarterbacks in each of the last 5 drafts, putting them all into one big list. Justin Fields was the number one quarterback on that whole list for me. I'm so much more confident that Justin Fields, regardless of where he goes, I hope it's the 49ers. Again, don't want to bury the lead there, but we'll get to that. I'm very comfortable saying that I think Justin Fields is going to be an all-pro type of player in the NFL.
Yeah, I've been all in on Justin Fields, and then the media hype machine that has kind of turned him into like this bastard child has worried me to the extent that anything would worry me when the media gets a hold of a story. But I'm standing strong. I think Justin Fields is going to be awesome. I think, to simplify the game of football, the goal is to get yards, to get first downs, to get points. And when your quarterback is as athletic and as talented as Justin Fields, it makes getting yards easier, which then makes getting first downs easier, which then makes getting points easier. It just gives you, his level of athleticism gives you it gives you extra ability and more opportunity to pick up yards, to pick up first downs, to pick up touchdowns. And so why wouldn't you take that guy? Like, he is built like a freight train. He's got I guess, because I don't have a ton to say about Trevor Lawrence, so we could skip over him and we'll come back to Zach Wilson in a second. But Justin Fields, when I'm watching some of the like mechanical breakdown videos that you can find on the internet, I think he has like the sturdiest base of any of the quarterbacks. He doesn't lean on his throws. Like, Trevor Lawrence actually leans a lot on his throws, which is not something that you want because it can cause the ball to float in directions that you don't want. Field stays so level, so straight up when he throws the ball with a sturdy base. He's comfortable in the pocket. And that's another thing. When you talk about athletic quarterbacks, everyone goes to their ability to make plays outside of the pocket, but like, you still have to make your money inside the pocket in the NFL.
Yes.
And so Justin Fields out of the pocket is exceptional. Justin Fields inside the pocket is even better. Like you said, he is actually exceptional after the first read. Whoever says he's not good on after the first read is either lying or they haven't done their research. He's being sort of targeted in a similar way to Lamar Jackson and in a similar way to a number of other black quarterbacks, where like questions about work ethic are coming up. And like, I just don't get it. Like,
work ethic, intelligence,
leadership,
all those things.
Yeah. Everything
they use for like every single black quarterback that comes out. The stuff about his intelligence is absolutely insane, because Harvard was recruiting him just based on his academics alone. So I don't understand that. I think we've learned not to make snap judgments about people's characters, but he seems like he's a great guy. Mm-hmm. On the field, I think he has the strongest arm in this class. I think he's the most accurate passer of this class. I think he's the most athletic quarterback of this class. And I don't understand how we went from not just talking about him not being the number 1 pick, not just talking about him being the number 2 pick, but being like, yeah, this might be a guy who falls to like 9th or, 15th or something like that. I don't understand it.
Yeah, and the things that I've heard people parroting are what we just talked about, the work ethic, and phrases like last guy in, first guy out have been floated.
I think other teams are just trying to get him to fall in the draft because they know how good he is.
I think that's a great point. That's a very Belichick move to just, yeah.
NFL draft prospects are not finished products. And I think that's a big thing that people need to think about more. And I guess that's kind of what in my, me missing on Justin Herbert and how good he has been relative to how bad I thought he was coming into the draft taught me that look at what a player can be, not what he is right now.
Trey Lance, I don't have a ton of thoughts on just because not a ton of tape, but like the tape that does exist is like pretty good. You like his size, you like his athleticism. He has a couple of highlight plays that are just like stupid funny. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Trey Lance? How good do you think he could be?
I think the sky's the limit for Trey Lance. I think, it's tough because he hasn't played football in a year and he played at a lower level school. To be fair, Zach Wilson also played against not the best competition either. I don't, again, one of those things where we hold it against one guy, but not the other. When I watch Trey Lance, it screams to me. I told you prime Colin Kaepernick was what stood out to me.
I love that
right away. Which people are going to be like, oh, Colin wasn't very good. I'm like, if you watch Colin during like those playoff runs the Niners had, he was special. He was special. And I think Trey Lance can be that same type of special.
On any given Sunday, Colin Kaepernick could have been the top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah. And then he ended up throwing to guys like, Jeremy Curley and, no disrespect to Jeremy Curley, but we were going through, you and I, just like a few weeks ago, just for fun, the 49ers rosters from like his last year there. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, there's a void of wide receiver talent that, that 49er team would have envied the 2020 Patriots wide receiver core. This is all to say I really like Trey Lance.
Thoughts on Zach Wilson?
Zach Wilson's a guy who, I think is a more fun watch than any of the quarterbacks. He kind of makes, just really fun plays out there. He's my number 3 quarterback in this draft. I like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields more than him. For the record, the top 5 quarterbacks in this class make up 5 of my top 10 quarterbacks in the last 5 years. I think they're all very good. Zach Wilson, for me, sometimes is just he's getting a little too cute, a little too aggressive, not seeing the whole picture on the field, missing wide open guys to try to make a different throw that was half open. But I think, again, the upside is clear there. He makes some ridiculous throws out there. Just absolutely ridiculous arm angles off platform. He can move around in the pocket. He can get out of the pocket. I actually think he's better making plays outside of the pocket throwing the ball than he is if you contain him inside the pocket. You understand why people say he looks kind of like Pat Mahomes when he plays, because they have that same sort of improviser, schoolyard kind of play style going on.
Which is a skill set that I really value. The ability to improvise, to make plays off schedule is really important. If a play breaks down and you have an unathletic quarterback, you better hope that a receiver gets open, and you better hope that the quarterback can deliver that ball. But if you have a guy like Wilson, Lance, Fields, they can explode out of the pocket. If nothing else, pick up 2 yards rushing the ball. Before we move on, do you want to talk about Kellen Mond or any of the other quarterbacks in the draft?
I'll quickly talk about Mac Jones really quick.
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot about Mac.
Yeah, I mean, I feel so bad for how my thoughts on Mac Jones have evolved, because I really liked him when the Niners were picking at 12, and I was kind of on board if the Niners picked him there. And then we traded up to 3, and all of a sudden uninformed people in the media are saying that they know the 49ers are picking Mac Jones, which I'll talk about when we get to my mock draft, are not true. That will not happen. But I like Mac better than I liked Tua last year, who was also at Alabama. I think they're actually pretty similar. Accurate, good arm, good in the pocket, pretty decent mobility. What I think the note that sums up what I think about Mac that I wrote down is, can do what you want when you want it, but that's about it. He won't elevate your team to the next level. That's basically my feelings on Mac Jones. I think he's very solid and very good. I think he has the lowest ceiling and the highest floor of anyone in this draft class.
I really do like Mac Jones quite a bit. As a Niner fan, I want Justin Fields because I think he's the best quarterback. If we end up with Mac Jones, I will still be very happy because, like you, I've always liked Mac, but I liked him at 12, like you said. This is the big question: is can Mac Jones be Kirk Cousins or Matt Ryan or Tom Brady?
Well, he probably won't be Tom Brady. I need that comp to stop with people. Mac Jones probably is not going to be the best quarterback of all time. That's just a preposterous thing. I understand what people say, what they're trying to say when they say that, but like Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins are much better comparisons for what we should be. It's like when people were like, Zion might be the next LeBron. I'm like, Zion could be so great and he would probably never even sniff LeBron.
Let's jump into your mock draft.
Yes, really quick though, we do have a trade that happened in the middle of recording this. Yes, let me find what the exact details of it were. Basically, okay, the trade is, I don't have the exact details in front of me, but the Baltimore Ravens are trading Orlando Brown, their right tackle who wanted out, to the Kansas City Chiefs for the number 31 pick.
That's awesome for the Chiefs.
And some additional picks are in there too. I don't know what the additional ones are, but for the sake of this podcast, that is the big one there.
Okay. Well, I like Orlando Brown a lot.
I do too.
So that's, damn. I mean, the Chiefs had to address offensive line this offseason, and they've done that. Good for the Chiefs.
So we're gonna make some on the fly changes to this mock draft here. Really just one pick down at 31. The Ravens are also signing Alejandro Villanueva.
Cool.
I would think to replace him. So, all right, let's jump into it.
Okay. Unsurprisingly, at the top, I have your mock draft in front of me. Unsurprisingly, Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson go 1 and 2. We already talked about the quarterbacks there. So a lot of people have already said this, but the draft starts at 3 with the San Francisco 49ers. Who are the 49ers taking at 3?
I think I know everyone's saying Mac Jones, but let me lay it out for everyone at home. This is something you and I have talked about a lot. This is some conspiracy theories that I have been digging into for months now.
Yes.
The Justin Fields stuff comes from the QB Collective, which is Kyle Shanahan's quarterback camp that he has worked at for a couple years now. Justin Fields was a participant there, I think his junior or senior year in high school. But the big thing to me that signals that those are the two who they're thinking of is quarterback coach John Beck, who is a close friend of Kyle Shanahan. John Beck has been working with Justin Fields and Zach Wilson for months now. 49ers have had long reported interest in Zach Wilson dating back to like November. And recently, the 49ers asked Trey Lance to also go work with John Beck. Trey Lance was working with Quincy Avery before, who's one of the best quarterback coaches out there. They asked him to work with John Beck, who has also worked with Jimmy Garoppolo, CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins, all the 49ers quarterbacks over the last few years. Notable person who has not worked with John Beck this offseason is McCorkle Jones. So
I forgot that was his name.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
So just on the surface level of that alone, without diving into the football part, that's what indicates to me that it's going to be Justin Fields or Trey Lance. And in this mock draft, I have them picking Justin Fields because I've said it before, I think Justin Fields is the best quarterback in this class.
It seems like all the evidence is pointing towards Fields or perhaps even Lance, but the Mac Jones to the Niners thing is entirely fabricated because of Shanahan's love and admiration for Kirk Cousins, which is weird because he does love Kirk Cousins and he did want to bring Kirk Cousins to the Niners, but like he was thrilled to be working with RG3 and then RG3 got injured. So his ideal quarterback is not necessarily Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo. He's going to take whoever the best guy is.
It's remarkable you say that, and I don't know if people actually listen to what Kyle Shanahan has said over the last 6 months, but even like through this whole draft process after they traded up to 3, someone asked him about Kirk Cousins, saying his ideal quarterback is Kirk. And he was basically saying, I love Kirk, but if I could draw it up, he would get the biggest, strongest, fastest guy who can play well in the pocket. And Justin Fields fits that bill. I think the whole Mac Jones thing came about because Chris Sims and Kyle are very good friends. And Chris Sims likes Mac Jones a lot. And Chris Sims has said that he thinks the 49ers should pick Mac Jones.
And also, for what it's worth, Kyle was asked if he had talked to Chris Sims, and he said that he had not talked to Chris Sims all offseason. So there's no inside information coming from Chris Sims on
Kyle
that one.
Kyle did not talk to Nick Saban when they were at the Alabama Pro Day watching Mac Jones throw.
Yeah.
So there's that.
So, okay, Justin Fields.
I just think if you're reading the tea leaves, it's not going to be Mac Jones. That's all.
But if it is, then, full faith in Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch that they got their guy. Okay, the top 3 picks are quarterbacks. We go to the 4th overall pick, which belongs to Atlanta. You have a trade, though.
I do have a trade. This is a trade I have not seen floated around much, but it's a trade that makes a lot of sense to me. I think Detroit is going to take pick number 7 and one of those first-round picks they got from the Rams next year, as well as the 3rd-round pick they got from the Rams this year. I'm going to send it up to Atlanta, and they're going to pick Trey Lance. I think it's a great spot for Trey Lance. I think you're not forced into playing him year 1 because you have Jared Goff there. I just really like the spot. It makes a lot of sense for me.
I like that. Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, the ideal spot for Trey Lance is to go to a place where he doesn't have to start immediately. And, Jared Goff is under contract for a minute, and he still could be a good quarterback. So what you kind of want, and we talked about this in our NBA pod, you want to build a foundation. You want to build a floor like the New York Knicks did. And God, how right was I about the New York Knicks?
Oh my goodness. Save it for the pod.
Saving it for the pod. But point being, they built a floor, they got decent, and now they're in a position where they could be like the Brooklyn Nets and go out and get some real guys. Because that's what the Brooklyn Nets did. They got decent with a bunch of young talent, and then they went out and got some real studs. So if you're the Lions, playing with Jared Goff right now gives you the opportunity to stay afloat and to be a decent enough team, potentially, to go 7-9, 8-8, high end 9-7, which then might attract more free agents next year, knowing that Trey Lance is going to be the guy eventually. So I think that this is a situation that works out for them, and it allows them to be decent right now, great in the future. Moving forward to the 5th overall pick, Cincinnati. This one's not too much of a shocker either. I think a lot of people have been projecting this. Who do you have?
Penei Sewell, the offensive tackle for Oregon. I know a lot of people want them to pick Jamar Chase, who I'll just say it, I have going 6 to the Dolphins up next. But I think you need to protect Joe Burrow, because I think Joe Burrow can be really good if you don't get him murdered again.
Yeah, that's a good point. Then Miami going 6, they're taking Jamar Chase. Is there any scenario where Jamar Chase is not the first receiver taken?
Do you count Kyle Pitts as a wide receiver? Because I think that's the shakeup that could happen there. Because I think there's a good chance Kyle Pitts can go before him.
He would be my preferred pass catching player, but Jamar Chase is being slotted earlier than Kyle Pitts in a lot of drafts. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Then we go to 7, which was Detroit, now Atlanta. Atlanta takes.
This is an area where they could take Kyle Pitts. A lot of people have mocked Kyle Pitts there at 4, so that would make sense for them to, get the guy they wanted there. I go with J.C. Horn, though, corner from South Carolina. Already talked about my love of him. I think you pair him up with A.J. Terrell, and they have a really good combo out there. Yeah, good stuff.
And then Carolina is up at 8, and you have Kyle Pitts going at 8.
I do have Kyle Pitts there. I think Kyle Pitts, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore is a really good pass catching group there for Sam Darnold. It's go time for Sam now. We'll see what he can do. We'll see what he's made of.
Who do you have going at 9 for Denver?
Yeah, Denver is actually the toughest pick for me in the whole draft. Every time I've done a mock draft, and it's actually the point I think where the draft shifts a lot of times in terms of how players fall, because they can kind of pick like any position really. I have them going Micah Parsons, the hyper athletic linebacker out of Penn State. He's not my favorite linebacker in the class. My favorite would be Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. But I think Parsons makes a lot of sense there at 9.
Then Dallas is up at 10. They lost Chidobe Awuzie this offseason, and you have them picking up Patrick Surtain the second.
Patrick Surtain, I think a very fundamentally sound corner, athletic, another one of those guys. So I'm like, yeah, he's going to be very good for a very long time.
Then we go to New York. They've been without Odell Beckham for a number of seasons. You have them picking up another wide receiver, and who do you have?
I have them going Jalen Waddle. I thought about giving them an edge guy here, but I think Jalen Waddle is a special talent, and again, another one of those times, like much like with what the Panthers are doing with Sam Darnold, where we're going to see what Daniel Jones is made of here. He has all the weapons in the world now. Jalen Waddle, Evan Engram, Kenny Golladay, Darius Slayton. Saquon's going to be back. We'll see what Daniel Jones is made of.
I absolutely love that pick for what it could mean for this coming season for Daniel Jones and for the Giants. 12 with Philadelphia is an interesting spot because they could go a number of different directions. They're a team that's kind of in free fall, but they do have a quarterback that we really like. This coming season could go one of two ways. I think this pick is really important for them. Who do you have? I
have them getting Devontae Smith, giving Jalen Hurts a weapon out there. This is a pro Jalen Hurts podcast.
Yeah.
I really want them to give him a chance and surround him with the necessary talent to do that.
A team that's kind of in a similar boat as the Los Angeles Chargers. Their season could be really good, really bad. They have a great quarterback, so we could see what happens. Take me through the Chargers, take me through Minnesota at 14, and then New England at 15.
Chargers, we're going Rashawn Slater. He's actually my favorite offensive tackle in the draft. I think Penei Sewell goes higher just because of the upside there, but I think Slater, you can play him at tackle, you can play him at guard. You got to protect Justin Herbert. Minnesota, again, Jalen Phillips, who I already said I think talent-wise is a top 5 player in this draft. It's just great value for that slot. They need some pass rush help. And then New England, we kind of talked about it earlier, but they're going Mac Jones here. I think Mac Jones, it's another kind of great fit there. I think Bill would do his guy Nick Saban a solid here and pick his quarterback. They have a great relationship, and I think Mac fits in really nicely here.
Arizona's a team that is particularly interesting. They're at a weird spot in the draft. They're right in the middle of the first round, and so a lot of the top tier guys have gone. But who do you have the Cardinals taking? How does this pick make them contenders in the West next year?
This is another weird one for them, where I think this is actually kind of maybe a prime spot where they would look to trade down. I don't know if anyone necessarily would want to trade up to them, but I have them going Elijah Vera Tucker, the offensive lineman from USC. He can play tackle, but I think he's better suited at guard. Just give them some help for Kyler Murray so he doesn't have to run around as much.
Now, we've already talked about the Las Vegas Raiders and how Mayock and company tend to go out and get a guy regardless of where they're supposed to be slotted. Is that a similar situation, or is this a guy that's going in the top 20 in most mock drafts?
I like Christian Darrisaw, the offensive tackle from Virginia Tech, a lot. I think this is a good spot for him. He should go in about this range. But again, I don't know who the Raiders will pick because they kind of surprise us every year. They surprised us when they got rid of their whole offensive line. Sans Richie Incognito, and they need to replace that now. So here we are.
And then Miami's back on the board. Real quick, just thought on Miami. I love everything that front office is doing. They're just acquiring draft capital. They're making really solid, sound decisions. I just really like Miami, so good for them. Who do you have them taking at number 18?
Very high on Miami, very high on Brian Flores. And here they're getting a guy who I think would be a player Brian Flores loves in Zaven Collins, who can do all sorts of things for you on the defensive side of the ball.
Washington, Chicago, and Indianapolis. Who do you got?
Washington, we're going JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame, kind of linebacker safety hybrid, but I think he can, again, a guy who you have that incredible defensive line they have up front, and you just have him cleaning up back there. Chicago, I think they would really like to get a quarterback, but they're just too far down in the draft to even trade up to get one unless they sell the farm. So they're going to get Tevin Jenkins, the right tackle from Oklahoma State, who's just a man among boys out there. And then the Colts, they could use a tackle too, but I have them going Greg Newsome, the corner out of Northwestern.
A lot of really good corners in this first round, and spoiler alert.
Really good.
Spoiler alert, we're not done.
We're not done.
Real quick, I just want to talk about Chicago. Like you said, they do need a quarterback, and so where would they have to go in order to get the quarterback? They'd have to jump New England.
I don't think Mac Jones is the type of quarterback they would trade up for. Mm-hmm. So they would really honestly need the Falcons probably to stand pat at 4, or they'd have to trade up to 4 with the Falcons and then trade up somewhere between 7 and 5 for Trey Lance, which I don't think Miami's going to trade down anymore from 6 unless they're trading down 1 or 2 spots. Yeah, honestly, the best case scenario for them is if the Niners pick Mac Jones.
And that is a scenario that really shakes up the draft. We kind of talked about it or alluded to it. Like if everybody's waiting for the Niners to make their pick, we're all waiting for Godot. All right, so the Chicago Bears, the Indianapolis Colts, we went through them. Tennessee Titans, New York Jets, Pittsburgh Steelers. Go ahead and take me through those three.
Titans are going Terrace Marshall, the wide receiver from LSU. I think they really need someone to go with A.J. Brown out there, especially now that Corey Davis is gone. The Jets were going Caleb Farley, who I think is a top 10 talent in this draft, but had a back surgery that just happened, so I think he's going to slide a little bit. But the Jets need corner help. And the Steelers are going with Creed Humphrey, the center from Oklahoma, who I think will be a perfect fill-in for Pouncey, who's gone. I think he's going to be there for years and years. I think he's a really, really good. I think he's a better center than anyone is, whatever their position is in this draft.
Oh, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Jacksonville's back on the clock at 25. We've already seen Miami make multiple picks. I think whenever you have 2 first-round picks, it's important that you hit on the second one just as much as it is on the first one. They get their quarterback with the number 1 overall pick. What do they do at 25? How do they balance that out? Yeah,
for me, they're just going best player available here with Trayvon Moehrig, the safety from TCU. Love his game. I think he would really help out their defense a lot.
And now we got Cleveland at 26.
Yeah, at 26, Cleveland, I have them going Kwity Paye, the edge rusher from Michigan. They might kind of shift this around now that they got Clowney, but I also don't know if you can really count on Clowney to provide you that top tier ability that he once had, or to even like stay on the field at this point. So I think just, I'm a proponent of having lots of good quality edge rushers that you can rotate in and out.
Totally agree. Now we got Baltimore and New Orleans, and you have them both taking wide receivers.
Yeah. Baltimore, I think, needs a wide receiver. They're going to get Rashad Bateman from Minnesota, who's a super talented guy. He's kind of like just like the quiet sleeper of this class, who everyone's like, he's really good, but he's maybe a little boring, so he's kind of fallen down the board a little bit. And then conversely, we have Elijah Moore, who is an electrifying slot receiver, who I think would pair nicely with this Saints offense that we kind of don't really know what they're going to look like now.
Now at 29, who does Green Bay take?
I think Aaron Rodgers probably wants them to take a wide receiver, but I also think Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to get knocked on his ass every play. So they're going to go with Sam Cosmi, the offensive tackle from Texas.
I actually can't. I hope this does happen, and I can't wait for it to happen because I want to see Green Bay Packers fans get even more angry. Not that this would be a bad pick. It would obviously be a very good pick for them. But yeah, just having a guy that most fans won't be able to see the impact of from play to play is just, it'll be too funny. Okay, so now we got Buffalo, who is in a really strong position this coming season. They're definitely title contenders. They have a pick here at the end of the first round. How do they get better? The
Bills, I have going with Jason Owe, the edge rusher from Penn State, who is a guy who did not have a single sack last year. No production, but just the offensive, the athletic tools jump off the chart, and I think he can be a special guy.
We already alluded to this earlier when we talked about the trade. The 31st overall pick that Kansas City had has now been traded, so what happens here now?
I think I'm going to throw another trade in there.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think when I'm looking at it, geez, this might be a bold take, but I think... Ooh, which team do I want to trade up, though? Because I have 2 I'm thinking of. Okay, you know what? I think we're going to have the Chicago Bears trade up to that pick there, and I think they're going to draft Kellen Mond, the quarterback from Texas A&M.
There we go.
He's a guy who I have,
I love this.
For quite a few months now, before the Niners traded up, I was texting you. I'm like, I really like Kellen Mond to the Niners in the second round. Or, trading up late into the first round. He's a guy who, all the tools are there. He's a little stiff. He's a little robotic. But I think you can have him sit a year behind Andy Dalton, which is why I like trading up into the first for him, because you get that extra year on the contract. I like his game overall. I think this is a sneaky move. I don't know how likely this is to happen, but it's a move I'm going with here.
Okay, now we have the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 32. They've brought back all of their starters from last year, so there is good reason to believe that they're going to be right back in the Super Bowl if all things go according to plan. with the final pick of the first round and the final pick of your mock draft, who do you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting?
You know, I almost thought about giving them a quarterback too to sit behind Brady, but in the end, I decided that I think they're just going to not really care about the future and just go as hard as they can at the next 2-3 years, whatever it may be. And they're going Aziz Ojulari, the edge rusher from Georgia, just add to that defense. That's incredible. I already said I love having tons of pass rushers you can rotate in and out.
So that's your mock draft. And this was, sometimes the draft goes exactly as according to plan, and there's not a ton of trades. There's not like a lot going on. And those drafts are really boring. Those drafts are very unfun. This draft, though, we have multiple storylines going on. We have so many quarterbacks. We have the Niners at number 3. We're kind of just waiting for them to start the draft. If they do take Mac Jones, watching everybody scramble and try to figure out what they want to do and all the trade potential that could occur there. Who moves up to 4? Because somebody's definitely going to try to get 4 and try to get Justin Fields or Trey Lance. So many potential storylines, so many interesting things. And then the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round, they're all going to have so much talent as well.
That's where you win the championships, is in those late rounds.
That's pretty much going to do it for us. Do you have any final thoughts before we close this thing out?
You know what? My final thought is a personal note as a fan of the 49ers. It's very rare that you have a chance to get like a possible dynasty going. But if the 49ers like pick the right guy here, and you know what? It could be Justin Fields. Maybe we look back in 5 years and it's Mac Jones. Who knows? But they have a chance here to make the pick, and I hope they don't screw it up. I just want Justin Fields on the 49ers, man. I think that'd be so special.
I totally agree. I think that's a good place to wrap this up. Thank you so much for listening to the Nothing Notable podcast. Do all the liking and subscribing and commenting and all that stuff.
Just click something.
And click on a button for just
That's
do
not
it.
the one with the thumbs down.
Yeah, please. If you have listened this far, which is very unlikely, let us know who you think the Niners should take at number 3, who you have going at any pick. Just write something, anything in the comments. Let us know that anyone's listening. And again, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.